Professor Terence Gomez. Let me commend you for a wonderful presentation. You have done a lot of research. I think you must be the only person single-handedly to do so much so soon on this whole issue of corruption. And we owe it to you to back you up. I also like to thank my old colleague, young, former colleague, Tan Sri for this great initiative on the G25. I only wish that now that we are a new Malaysia, now that we are more multiracial, that the G25 itself will think of including some non-Malays in the G25. At least in a consultancy or advisory or informal basis. I have this matter of corruption very close to my heart. We all do. But I have happened to be one of the presidents of Transparency International when Paul Lau, the great Paul Lau, was my deputy. And I have to make a little confession. I misjudged. Actually, he was a good deputy. And I thought, good, this is the man I need for president. But very soon after that, I regretted, but it was too late. The damage has been done, and now we must try and redeem the situation. One thing strikes me, being in the civil service, TI, and the private sector now, is that there is really, even now, Terence, I don't know if you agree with me, no strong political will to stamp out corruption at every level. Because there are strong vested interests, as Terence, I think this is his major point where I'm concerned, he shows clearly that the opposition, the government now and the opposition then, the government then and the opposition now, are still not very serious about it. They will placate the public, but in the end, they realize that as of now, because of our historical feudalistic system, because of colonialism, there are aspects to that too. And the fact that corruption is not peculiar or typical to Malaysia, but is widespread all over the world. In my experience in TI and attending meetings in Berlin, you can see that it's terrible, it's worse, and it's so subtle. Even in the US, with all these lobby groups, and there are different ways of doing it. So the point I'm trying to make is, it's something that we cannot depend on the politicians. I don't know whether you agree with me. Because deep-seated is their vested interest to seek re-election and to seek power, and elections, as Terence pointed out, cost money. So we must find ways and means of reducing this cost of election. Reducing the incentives to try and get illegal money for elections. And therefore, I'm underlining the point that the NGOs have a tremendously important role to play. The people on the ground. We must really develop a culture of fighting corruption, a culture of integrity. And that is not only, and I beg to differ with, if I may have got the wrong impression from Terence and the approach, that you need reforms, yes, I agree. You need to change the legislation, yes. But you can have all a first-class constitution, all first-class rules and regulations, and we do have in government good rules and regulations built up from the colonial time. over the years. But if you don't have the will of the people, if you don't have the right values, the right attitudes, this rejection of corruption in every form, it will continue to be there and worsen. So our emphasis, I would strongly recommend, should be holistic, bringing in the people who will reject it, not so much putting pressure on the politicians, which is also important. I agree with him that the time is now to strike while the iron is hot. At no other time in our history have we got a confluence of ideas and thoughts and focus on the need to take important, urgent action to fight corruption. But that you will find, I think I will find. This is a strong point. The government, the opposition will say, yes, let's do something about it. And you might even change some laws, like for example, the MACC is now under Parliament. I think, I agree, it's a great thing. But I was a member of the MACC. After one term, I gave up. This is the truth. I told them I don't want the extension because the extension was coming up. Somehow or other, the message didn't get across, or there was some miscommunication. The letter came. They say, oh, but the letter has come. I said, no, I told you earlier, I won't stand. They say, why? I said, you know why. I was chairman of one committee, but I can tell you, the staff of the MACC was struggling. A lot of very, very good people, but they were struggling, and I sympathized with them because I was also in the civil service. Because the leadership was not encouraged to be honest. And they had to live with the inconsistencies, the conflicts within the organization and the whole system. So rather than have to defend them, rather than have to fight them, rather than know that there was no point in it, I thought I'll express my protest by leaving. But later I met Tan Sri Najib at some function or other. He said, hey, now what happened to you? I sent a letter. So I had to make it a joke. I said, banyak susah. Pasal apa? I said, saya seorang tua, nak rehat sikit. Surah bersara. Okay, jolly. But he got the message because I had to tell why I didn't want to carry on. But I'm saying, the point I'm making is, the civil service, and Tan Sri Sharif and others, Tantapan and others may back me out, Jayaraj Rao too. There are limits to what you can do in government and the private sector. If your boss is so inclined to encourage you to be corrupt or to close an eye, it's very difficult to resist it unless you resign. But the whole system is like that. You got to be resigning. Once you resign from government, that's out. But I'm talking about the private sector. You can find a boss who say, look, go and give that chap money, let's do this, let's do that. But if you cannot stand up, you stand up to him, if he respects you, fine. But some people, and a lot of people, don't do it. And so it becomes very difficult for them. They can't be resigning and going from one company to another. So I go back to my point. It's a cultural issue. People must be against it. People must say corruption is najis. It's evil. And this is where all the religious organizations, I don't know in our discussion, debate, we don't bring the great religions into the picture. The Christian, the Muslim, the Buddhist, the Hindus, if they all, at least once or twice a year, talk about the evils of corruption and quote chapter and verse from the Holy Quran, from the Vedas, from the Buddhist scriptures, from the Bible. There are verses which speak up against corruption. The school system, I think it's well worth it to be able to introduce in their curricula, something about corruption. So it must be a way of life, a cultural phenomenon, which I think we tend to ignore. Now the civil service, I think, plays a very important role in resisting corruption. Many of us of the older school will recall that we used to have the old British system of minute writing. You get a proposal, you will make your recommendations to your minister on the minute sheet. If he disagrees with you, he writes back on the minute sheet. I've had occasion where, well, I'll pay him a compliment, so nothing wrong. Tunku Razale had a big problem raising wages, and he wanted to do it. And I said, from the economic point of view, the economic division of the Treasury, this is not possible. It is not feasible. It is not wise. Just so much or not that much. But he insisted. He raised it at a board meeting. I'm just giving an example. But this commonplace, a lot of civil servants will tell you the same kind of story. The whole senior heads of department and divisions with the KSP, the Secretary of Treasury, say, look, this is the case. And they all kept quiet, because that was their way of saying, look, I think the fellow is right. Then he calls me up and says, look, I must do it, I'm committed. So I said, sir, you can do it, that's your prerogative. You're the political leader, but put it in writing to me. And to his great credit, he meant it. I have to do this, and please go ahead. So that was it. But he took the responsibility. But today, we don't have that. The tradition of minute writing, the tradition of giving instructions. In fact, many of you might remember there was a minister who is now very active on the scene, who used to write in pencil, give instructions on sheets, minute sheets in pencil. So what happened is, there was one chap who said, look, I can't take this, I'll photocopy it. Serious. But somehow or other, the office boy who was doing it felt a bit uncomfortable and told somebody else. And that went back to the ears of the minister. And that guy was removed. So I think it's important to say, make this point, that the rot starts at the top. And if you don't stop the rot at the top, you're finished. And this is why I come again to this theme. It's a whole cultural milieu, it's a whole people's movement. Oh, I didn't know I'd speak so long. I told you it's near and dear to my heart. So I would say the PH Pakatan Harapan Manifesto, I've never known or heard, or maybe I was wrongly brought up, to believe that it is just a guideline. It is a commitment, it's a promise, it's a pledge that must be adhered to and can be ignored only if they come around and say, this we said we'll do this, but it's not possible for the following reasons, which must be legitimate, not bluff. So if we can at this stage begin to worry about the veracity of the manifesto, I cannot be faulted for having doubts as to whether we will move forward. We may move forward, but as Terence well said, we are moving forward, and I commend the government. But if it's a snail's pace, then we'll be back to square one. And this is why people like Cynthia have got a very important role to play. Push hard. If they don't listen, get out. Thank you very much.